Hello, and welcome to another edition of Grace and Truth with Pastor Bev and Kelsey.
Hello.
It's official. It's on the advertiser now.
Oh no.
So today we are going to talk about our last two women in Genesis, and some people will go, "Yay!" And others were like, "We want more." But
actually, yeah, it's been really educational even for me and stuff because I knew most of the women, but there were a few I knew the name, but I did not know the story behind it because they don't really talk a lot about it.
they
don't really touch it except
few.
for Eve in Genesis. That's all you basically kind of know. But with these, this is kind of cool.
Well, they talk about Sarah a lot.
A little bit, yeah.
Very little about Rebecca and, the other women of the Bible.
Yeah.
Very little. And part of that is the way that the lectionary is set up.
Mm.
But the lectionary is, it's the common basis that pastors use and churches use so that, if you drive around a big city, you'll see that so-and-so is preaching on this, and so-and-so down the street is preaching on it, and so-and-so down the street, and that's why, because it's called the common lectionary. And what it is that it's a layout in 3 years of what to preach on.
Okay.
So, but the problem with that is that some of the lesser scriptures, you got like 4 scriptures every week to choose from. And the pastor chooses the one that they want. And it could be the same scripture every 3 years, every 3-year cycle.
Yeah.
And they don't even realize it. But it leaves out really minor characters. Mm-hmm. And today we're going to talk about 2 very minor characters. So most people know the story of Joseph.
The coat of many colors.
Right, the coat of many colors. Or you may know him from the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Yep.
Same Joseph. Joseph's story is well known.
He was the one with all those brothers that put him in the well or pit.
Right.
Okay, that's the same Joseph. Okay.
Well, I think it's be like a cistern. So a cistern is something that holds water. It's like a well.
Okay.
It holds water. Obviously, it must have been really dry that year. And I'm going to be talking about drought Sunday. So just kind of a precursor for Sunday. Check it out on Sunday. But Joseph had been sold by his brothers to the Ishmaelite traders. So basically like their 4th, 5th cousins at this point. Because the Ishmaelite traders would often go to Egypt and they would trade their goods and so forth and bring them back. So Joseph was sold into slavery. That was a reality in our culture. We view slavery as absolutely wrong, and I personally would agree with that. And in my family genealogy, I so far have found one slave owner, and that really made me pause and think about that. It wasn't something that I was proud of. So, but thankfully, so far it's only been one.
There you go.
So Joseph was sold into slavery, and he was sold to a man named Potiphar. And Potiphar was the captain of the guard for Pharaoh. So he was in the ruling class. He was a part of the ruling class, yet he was still subject to the king and so forth. So Potiphar bought Joseph from the Ishmaelites, and he found that he could trust Joseph, that no matter what job he gave him, he did it well, and that he could be trusted. And until after a couple of years, Potiphar made Joseph what's called the overseer of his household. So if you think of an overseer like we think of in the South and in Southern slavery in the United States with a whip and all that, that's completely contrary to the kind of overseer that Joseph would have been.
Okay.
He's more like a supervisor at this point because he still holds on to his faith no matter what. And he holds on to his faith traditions. Now, mind you, his dad had four wives. But Joseph was chaste. So, meaning that he hadn't been with anyone. And that's important when we get to our next step. So just keep that in mind. But Joseph was good looking. I mean, good looking. What one of my sisters would call eye candy in our terms.
Yep.
So, I mean, and there is, we tend to think that like pornographic materials are detrimental to women and that they're mainly disrespectful of women. Let's put it that way. However, what is less talked about is that there are plenty of pornographic materials of men. So I remember when I was in college, a Playgirl magazine was floating around the dorm. Yeah. And, you know, and there are bars for male strippers that brides go to and frequent. So, yeah, you know, lust is lust. And it's like the basic human emotion. You see, yeah. You know, ooh, good looking. Yep. Ooh, what pretty eyes, right? And women we're not immune to that. In fact, one of my dear friends who passed away a couple of years ago used to watch Gunsmoke.
Gunsmoke.
She loved Gunsmoke. And you know why she loved Gunsmoke? Can you guess? Matt Dillon. Because the beginning of every Gunsmoke episode, what do you see? You see Matt Dillon's rear end.
Yep, walking towards
and she
the
was
guy.
like, woohoo. So yeah, women are women. We've got those feelings too, and that's healthy. However, Potiphar's wife was not what we would call healthy because she cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me," which basically, you know, means let's have sex.
Let's get it on.
Exactly. You know, what was the name of that singer? Oh, Barry
White.
Barry White, you know? Yeah, yep. So the text says she spoke to Joseph day after day. He would not consent to lie beside her or be with her. So he's saying no because, you know, he does not want, it's not so much that he did not want to betray the trust of his master, but also he didn't want to betray his God and do in sinful ways. So, and we're in chapter 39 of Genesis. So, let's see. Chapter 11. One day, however, when he went into the house to do his work, and while no one else was in the house, she caught hold of his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and ran outside. I mean,
take off.
Just took off, you know. And we don't know if he was stark naked or what, but he just left the building. He was like Elvis. He left the building. But when he left, here she is holding on to his clothes. And if you've ever heard of the phrase, a woman scorned, you don't mess with a woman scorned. So he had not only refused her day after day after day, but he literally ran away from her. So she decided to pay him back. When she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled outside, she called out to the members of her household and said to them, "See, my husband has brought among us a Hebrew to insult us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And when he heard me raise my voice and cry out, he left his garment beside me and fled outside." Then she kept his garment by her until his master came home, and she told him the same story, saying, "The Hebrew servant whom you have brought among us came in to me to insult me. But as soon as I raised my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled outside." When his master heard the words that his wife spoke to him, saying, "This is the way your servant treated me," he became enraged. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. He remained there in prison. So, last episode we talked about Tamar and how she pretended to be a prostitute, but really she was doing something that was righteous. So here is a woman who is pretending to be righteous, but she's acting like a prostitute. And you can't deny the contrast between those two women.
Oh, yeah.
So now she was Egyptian, and I'm not an expert on Egyptian lore or anything like that, far from it. And just what I see on TV documentaries, because that's fun. But I don't think that if Joseph had said yes, I don't think that the result would be any different. I think Potiphar would have jailed him anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But actually, this is a way that God was protecting Joseph to get him out of this situation with this woman. And when Joseph was in prison, he did everything that he was supposed to do. He became, now in jails, they have like trustees. He would be a trustee, where they're given a little bit more freedom and a little bit more leeway. And if you know the story, you know that Joseph interpreted the dreams of the cook and the cupbearer of Pharaoh, and eventually interpreted the dreams of Pharaoh himself, predicting 7 years of famine and 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of famine. And Pharaoh held him in high esteem, made him second only to him. And now we come to the next woman in Joseph's life.
Well, I think with Potiphar's wife, you've had a theme of, what are these women and stuff, and what are their main purpose for being mentioned in the Bible and stuff. I think for Potiphar is, earlier you had, I think it was Dinah, who got assaulted by the men because of their lust.
Right.
And there was a couple of other women and stuff before where they were being targeted and stuff by lustful men. I think with this one, it was also showcasing it's not just men. Like how you said earlier, there's those things for like the Playboy magazines. There was also a Playgirl magazine.
Right. Yeah.
I think with this one, it did showcase that women can do it too.
Women sin. Women are just as capable of sin.
Yep.
And actually, some denominations say that women are more prone to sin than men, because of Eve, you know.
Yeah. I think it's kind of.
But we go back to episode 1 with that.
Yeah. But within that theme of things and stuff, it just kind of like really broadens out because of her position, how much power there was that she could have held, but she'd rather have done this, go after Joseph and stuff, and look at the fallout that happened for them.
Yeah.
And such. So.
No fallout for her though. So.
You know.
She said he insulted her. He kind of did.
He
kind of
he
did,
left her
because he just ran away. So now we're going to come to the next woman that's in Joseph's life. And, and interesting, Potiphar's wife is never named. Not in any of the texts. She is never named. Her name is completely lost to history. Bye-bye. See ya. Mm-hmm. Now, eventually, Joseph married the daughter of the priest of On, and her name is Asenath, Asenath, and her name means belonging to the goddess Neith. And no, it's Neith.
Okay.
And I never heard about her before. So I did a little bit of digging, and actually, there's a cool story about Joseph and Asenath. So it's called a pseudepigraphal text because we don't know who the author is. So they're saying, well, it might be true, it might not be. We just don't know. So you got to look at it with a grain of salt. So we'll do that. We will look at it with a grain of salt, but it's a cool story. So in the beginning of the story, and you can find that story online through, I think it's the Jerusalem Women's Archive or Torah.com that also has it. So in the beginning of the story, we meet Asenath, and her father is the priest in this regional area. He's the high priest, and she's named after the goddess that they serve, obviously, Neith. And she is a goddess
of war.
She's one of the oldest deities of ancient Egypt. This is according to Wikipedia. So again, grain of salt. One of the oldest deities of ancient Egypt, worshipped from the pre-dynastic era through the Roman period. She was primarily the patron goddess of Sais in the Nile Delta, serving as a powerful warrior, creator, and funerary deity often associated with the Red Crown of Lower Egypt. So she would be before Isis. I think we got critters. So, yeah. We get squirrels here in the walls or mice in the walls sometimes. It's just what it is. So this story, according to Jewish Women's Archive, was written between the 1st century and the 2nd century BCE. And it reads like a romance novel. So, you know how we like our Hallmark Channel movies. You know, we ladies, we sometimes, you know, you got to watch the chick flick once in a while.
Got to read the books with Fabio on the cover.
With Fabio on the cover. Well, it's been a long time since I've read about one of those, but so we first meet Asenath, and she is very rich, and it is said she is her father's virgin daughter, and the son of the king wants to marry her, but she rejects every suitor. She finds something bad about every single one of them. She doesn't want anything to do with them. And enter Joseph, literally. Okay, that sounded wrong. Very wrong. So I apologize for that. So Joseph enters the town, and oh my goodness. Joseph enters the town, and he meets her father, who is the high priest, and she's just kind of hanging out in the corner. And he can see her out of the corner of his eye, and he's like, who is that? He's like, get that person out of here. So he rejects her right away. He's like, I want nothing to do, because I want nothing to do with pagan women or anything to do with them. I mean, think about it. He had already gotten really burned by this experience with his boss's wife, and yeah, that's just not a good thing. He was like, nope, I don't want anything to do with them, because he believed in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, his, great-grandfather, grandfather, and father. So he left. And she was not a happy camper.
Well, no, everybody was coming to her, and all of a sudden this guy comes in and stuff, and he goes, Doop.
Yeah, and she saw him, and she was like, he's cute. She's like, wow. And in the story, it says that the golden ray of light of God is shining around him and all that,
It
definitely.
Is Hallmark.
It's kind of Hallmark meets Fabio, and, it's kind of traditional romantic literature. And
wait, the hair is whistling in the wind.
Who knows? It could have been both of them.
It could have been.
So she discards her royal robes, locks herself in her tower room. She puts on a black tunic, covers her head in ashes, and for 7 continuous days she weeps, fasts, and refuses to touch food or water, utterly self-humiliating before the God of Joseph. She was in full-on repentance mode.
Whoa.
She's like, if this is the God of this guy, then I am so sorry. I mean, she knew she missed out on something really good. Mm-hmm. So, and then she prays to God. She prays to him. But the story's not over yet, because like any good romance novel, Joseph comes back through town, and they meet again, and she gets the opportunity to declare that she will do anything. She will worship his God for the remainder of her lifetime. She will dedicate her entire life to Joseph's God. And then the father gave her hand in marriage to Joseph. Kind of cool.
That is cool.
One of the cool things about it is that in the story, and I will call it a story, he doesn't force her to marry the king's son, or he doesn't force her to marry anybody. He's like, she just hates all men.
Yeah.
She just hates them all.
Yeah.
And Joseph was seen as hating all women because he didn't want anything to do with the pagan women.
Right. So
the only time we really read about her is, let's see, it's farther on, and we only read about her, I didn't write it down, when it describes Joseph's family. So it describes that he married Asenath, and they had 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And those 2 sons replaced the 2 older sons, Reuben and Simeon, in the clans of Judah.
Oh.
Because remember, Reuben and Simeon were disinherited.
Yep.
So that's how there's still 12 tribes of Israel, and that's how they came to be. And I like this story of Asenath. I think it's pretty cool. I mean, yeah, it's a total romance story, but she had what some call a theological makeover. So Joseph stayed true to God, and even in the way that the biblical text puts it, you don't get that idea. In the text, we're simply told that he marries the daughter of the priest, and you're thinking, oh, he married a pagan. Well, why would he do a thing like that? He didn't. So sometimes you do have to dig a little bit deeper. I would like to believe that that's true. I really would. Because then Joseph dies in Egypt, and his bones are eventually carried into the promised land with the Israelites. And they wouldn't do that. I don't think that they would do that, honor him to that degree.
If he married a pagan.
If he had married a pagan, if their children were pagans, but no, their children were leaders of Israelite clans. So that gives you another kind of inference that she was a respectful woman. So I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that does it with our women in Genesis. So we're probably going to take a break for a few weeks so that I can get through the next book of the Bible. But one thing that in Exodus that to look forward to is that there are 4 women associated with Moses right in the very start. And it's a really cool story. And these 4 women, in one way or another, saved Israel through Moses.
Wow.
Their actions saved Moses, and the whole thing, Moses as the Redeemer, and so much more. So I will see you probably in a couple of weeks.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So out of the women of Genesis that you've been through in these series and stuff, which one would you say, if you were trying to introduce someone about the women of the Bible, and they were like, I can't do all of them right now, I just only have time for like one, which one would you want them to read to get the basis of this is interesting, or this is something that'll pull you in to reading more of the women of Genesis? Which women's story would you say would really pull women of modern time into reading it?
I would say Rebecca.
Rebecca. Okay.
I would say Rebecca because she was the shepherdess.
Yes.
And we don't often associate that. I mean, and in the New Testament especially, they don't recognize women as holding that kind of a job, and it's so contrary to everything that we assume that the Bible is, because it is a patriarchal culture. But she was a shepherdess. And also the story of Rachel and Leah.
Yeah.
I mean, Rachel was his right hand. So she was his co-worker and partner in everything that he did. But yet, Leah is the one who the line progresses through from Christ. So, but I think I'd still go to Rebecca because that's just a great story. I mean,
Nice.
it's really cool, and her introduction and the setup of her story gets somewhat repeated through the next generation, and then we see that repeated in other generations as well throughout the Bible. So I would say that. I'd say Rebecca.
There you go. All right.
Thanks for that question. So, any other questions?
For me, no. But I know a lot of people that are watching this and stuff probably has questions sitting down on a piece of paper at home. And I hope that everybody knows that they can go on to the comment section, or they can also give us a call here at the church, and you can ask your questions. And halfway through our series here, we're hoping that we can do a question and answer with Pastor Bev.
You know, that would be a really good idea. So if you have questions about any of the women in Genesis that we've covered, or any other women of the Bible that you want covered, or that you're interested about, any questions about anything that I might have said, because sometimes, as obviously, I don't always think before I speak.
What did you mean?
Yeah. But if you've got questions, you can email them to us at mirrorsumc.org.
MirrorsUMC
at gmail.com. Our website is mirrorsumc.org, and that will hook you up to the email as well. You know, you can email us, call us.
Or there's a box on the bottom part of this video where you can do a comment section.
Yep.
And we'll be watching that as well.
Include it in the comments. So we will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Grace and Peace with Pastor Bev and Kelsey.
Bye.